Yeah, we really have to thank everyone here for this economic forum. This economic forum continuing here right now with a great discussion about the future of travel and tourism worldwide. With us right now, of course, a wonderful lineup of folks here. Tony Capuano, of course, CEO of Marriott International, joining us right now. Jane Sun, Trip.com CEO, and Rita Marques, Secretary of State of Tourism, one of the most beautiful countries in the world over there in Portugal. Let's start with you, Tony, here. Pretty much everyone I know right now has been looking up airfares, checking out hotel rooms, trying to book their first trip for what for many of them is going to be their first trip in well over a year here. What's occupancy looking like right now over at Marriott?
Well, it's recovering pretty steadily, as you might expect. It varies fairly significantly from city to city, from country to country. But right now, we stand on a global basis just a shade under 50% and rising, which is really quite encouraging. When we look at occupancy trends month over month, we see a pretty steady improvement.
Is this primarily leisure travelers that you're seeing right now, Tony?
In many parts of the world, yes. Here in the US, for instance, the recovery is disproportionately being led by leisure travel. But if you look at a market like China, which is our second largest market, actually in March of this year, we saw business transient demand actually ahead of where it was in 2019.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about China, specifically, I guess, some of the outbound travel here, Jane. What are you seeing right now with regards to folks maybe getting back to something resembling normal travel schedules?
Sure. In China, because of the effective control of the virus, the domestic travel piece has grown very significantly. As Tony said, not only the leisure travel, but also the business travel have rebounded very solidly. In the past couple of holidays, including the Labor Day weekend and Dragon Boat Festival, we have seen double-digit growth in both hotel and airlines. In the highest day, we have hotel volume growth for 70% year-over-year growth compared to 2019 pre-COVID. For air ticket, we grew about 30% year-over-year on the highest day, and rental cars 300% year-over-year. So we're very excited for the recovery in China market. Now, on the international piece, if it is cross-border transaction, that's very different from country to country. For example, from China to Singapore, there is no quarantine required, so that many people would travel to Singapore. However, if you require quarantine, then people tend to stay and wait until the vaccination rate is high enough and the quarantine period can be shortened before they make cross-border transactions.
Yeah, it's a good reminder here that, of course, a lot of COVID restrictions still in place, whether they're hard or soft. Rita, over there in Portugal, obviously a country dependent on a lot of international tourism, particularly from folks over in Europe. We know things aren't quite back to normal with regards to some of that outbound travel. What trends are you seeing right now?
The trend is positive. So we have been observing a growth rate as far as international markets are concerned. Of course, we are mostly dealing with closer markets from Portugal, so Spain, Italy, France, even the UK, while we were in the green list. But the trend is positive. But as you said, we are progressing slowly in a steady pace, but still slowly. And long haul markets are still not allowed to get into the most in Portugal are not allowed to get into the country, and most the situation is pretty much the same in all European countries, by the way.
With regards to pulling people into Portugal here, Rita, as well as I guess some of the other tourism secretaries that you talk to from other countries, how are they dealing right now with vaccine proof, vaccine documentation, vaccine protocols?
Well, as you may know, Portugal has now the European presidency, the European Council. And so we have been working very, very hard with other European countries in order to harmonize rules. But not only harmonize rules, and it's not only a question of harmonizing the rules and having everybody working with the same agenda. It's also tackling the certificate, the European COVID certificate. So we are now moving steadily, steadily in trying to execute the recommendations and even the legislation that has been recently approved by the European Union. So I guess that as from July the 1st, most of the European countries will have this certificate ready. So basically, we are working to have everything operational by the beginning of July, and this can allow, in a more easily way, people to get into the countries and to travel across Europe. So if you have a vaccine that is recognized by European agency, or if you have been tested with a negative test, of course, a negative result, or if you have an immunization certificate, the situation is going to be easily managed by the authorities, and they will let you in a more easily with a more easy process.
So Jane, with regards to some of the bookings that you're seeing through trip.com, are you finding that some of your customers are running into any issues with regards to vaccine protocols or testing protocols?
Not really. In China, everything is being controlled and taken care of very methodically. So a couple of months ago, we were under 100 million people for having taken vaccine. But last week, the number already have grown to 900 million, and pretty soon 1.4 billion people will be fully vaccinated. So everything is being conducted very orderly, and the vaccine records are very well kept and stored, so you can take the vaccine records when you travel around the country.
Sure. And so, Tony, I guess as we start to see more restrictions get lifted, there's still sort of a confidence gain here for customers. The idea that when they travel, they want to feel safe, feel like that they're not being put at risk here. What measures has Marriott taken so far to provide people with that comfort?
Like many travel companies at the start of the pandemic, we assembled a panel of experts, and we've let their opinion and their science really guide our operating protocols. As we sit here today, we're still requiring masks of our associates in virtually every hotel in the world, those that work inside. We continue to follow social distancing protocols. We're doing deep cleaning of our guest rooms and our public areas. And to your point, Romaine, all of that is intended to drive traveler confidence as they get back on the road.
One interesting thing I saw, I've stayed in a few hotels during the pandemic, including one owned by Marriott. And it was interesting how you were able to basically come in, go to your room without really having to interact with somebody, using a smartphone to do your check-in, to open your door, and to schedule cleaning if you wanted that cleaning. How long are those types of measures going to stick around?
I think they'll endure well beyond the pandemic. And what's so interesting to us, much of the functionality that you describe, the ability to check in and check out on the app, to access a mobile key, to use the chat function to interact with hotel staff, most of that was in place even prior to the pandemic. We've just seen an increase in adoption rates and an increase in comfort from our guests in using that technology. And I think now that they've become accustomed to using it routinely, we expect that'll continue well beyond the end of the pandemic.
Do you think that gives you a competitive advantage?
To the extent that we're easing the travel experience for our guests, absolutely. The trick for us will be to offer both. And even for certain guests, they may be on a business trip for one night where they simply want to check in on the app, access mobile key, and go straight to their room. That same guest a month later may take their family on vacation and want to stop at the front desk, ask questions about local restaurants, ask for support from the concierge as they plan their activities during the vacation. So we've got to strike the right balance of offering both options to our guests.
All right, another question here about vacations. This for you, Rita. Obviously, in recent days, we've heard from the UK, which has sort of shifted its stance on what countries it has on its so-called green list. We know there are a lot of other folks in that area that are looking to take their warm weather vacations here. Is there a sense here that the volumes of people that you're going to get over the next few months, that's still going to be below what you saw pre-pandemic, so let's say in 2019?
Oh, sure, sure. Most international authorities that work the tourism sector, they believe that we only will have the same numbers, the 2019 numbers in 2023. So we will take a while. So we've been discussing everyone. So we've been discussing all the measures implemented by hotels, by the governments, by the tour operators. But as you said at the beginning, we need to foster confidence, and it will take a while till we get the numbers we had 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. Still, I think this year we'll have higher numbers than the ones that we had last year. So people need to travel. You know, it's part of our DNA. And so we are expecting to have here in Portugal a growth rate when compared to last year's numbers of around 20 plus %.
Jane, so obviously global travel, whether it's tourism, business travel, whatever here, is to a large degree dependent on China, dependent on Greater Asia, if for no other reason than just the population growth over there. Your business is sort of broken down between obviously the domestic travel, but obviously a lot of cross-border travel as well here. Which areas of that business are doing best right now?
Yeah, the domestic China business is doing very, very well. As we discussed during the past few months, we have seen a sequential growth very healthily throughout the country, particularly during the long Labor Day weekend, which our government gives 5 days for students and family to travel around the country. That volume used to be brought to overseas travel market now is turning into the domestic travel volume. So we have seen a very robust recovery within domestic market. Now, on the outbound travel and international travel, when we look at our search results, the pent-up demand is very, very strong. So I think people have the money to travel, has the eagerness to travel. Now we're just waiting for the right time for the border opens when they can travel freely and safely around the world.
Tony, I want to talk about some of your international businesses, your international locations here. What's sort of the traveler mix that you're seeing there? Are they leisure? Are they business travelers? Are they wealthier? Are they more middle class?
Again, it varies, in fact, quite significantly from market to market. I think if you look globally, leisure is the dominant segment today. But in those markets that have deep pools of domestic demand, certainly the US, certainly China, we are seeing pretty steady recovery in the other segments, business transient, and even in group. The thing that's quite interesting, though, pre-pandemic, it was pretty distinct. You could look at guests walking through the lobby of one of our hotels and know with a high degree of certainty, that's a business traveler, that's a leisure traveler, that's a group meeting attendee. And again, one of the trends that has emerged during the pandemic that we think will endure past the end of the pandemic is a blending of trip purposes. Guests who combine the necessity for business travel, bring their families, add a couple days of leisure travel. And I think that blending of trip purpose is great news for the hotel industry.
That blending of trip purposes, Rita, are you seeing that in Portugal?
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah. I think as it has been said, most of the travelers are from leisure. So they basically want to enjoy a couple of days in the beach or near the beach with the sun, the Portuguese sun, ideally. But we see a lot of people, trying to explore other type of activities when they visit the country. And of course, corporate events are slowly opening up. But still, we do have golf. We do have other activities. That could lead to this willingness to travel. I think so the market is quite flexible, and it could contemplate and could accumulate all types of willingness to travel, all motives to travel, and so I guess that the trend here is to be flexible enough to accumulate all these with these motives to travel, and be flexible enough and to grab the opportunity. And this is valid not only for the governments, but also for the private sector that needs to be flexible enough to accumulate all these metrics of factors that drive us to travel in Europe or outside Europe.
Yeah, before this interview, I was looking at some of the travel statistics out there, Tony, and while certainly Chinese travelers are a big part of the component, you're actually seeing some pretty big strength here out of the Middle East, both in terms of outbound travel from the Middle East as well as inbound. I know Marriott has had a growing presence in a lot of Middle Eastern nations. What's the general trend that you're seeing there right now?
There again, it varies a bit from market to market, but as the vaccine is more widely distributed, we are seeing pretty steady improvement. And use Doha as a proxy for this. In the first quarter, we saw occupancies in the low 60% range, but building each month in the quarter. And in fact, if you look at the statistics in Doha for March, we were actually ahead of where we were in March of 2019. So really encouraging pace of demand growth.
Jane, what are you seeing there as well with regards to travel to and from the Middle East?
Yeah, I just had a meeting with the travel bureau in Abu Dhabi. I think the interest for people travel into Middle East is very high, particularly for the high-end customers. We used to have this very high-end tour package, which will cost 200,000 per person per trip. It's selling very quickly on our website. These customers are very much eager to go to the Middle East and enjoying the sun over there. So we just had lots of planning meeting and wait for the right moment to bring the customers over.
Do you anticipate that we're going to see more direct access with regards to flights from either from your region over there in Asia to the Middle East?
Yes, I think so. I think once the vaccination rate reach to the herd immunity, where people will feel very safe to travel into the region, the airlines and hotels will all see a very significant pickup from the outbound travel from the Chinese tourists.
Have you seen at all, I know it's still a little bit early, but have you seen at all any interest, Jane, with regards to the 2022 FIFA Cup and the preparations for that?
Oh, the interest is very high. That we look at our search volume on our site. The search for these events are growing very significantly. So we believe once the border is opened, we will be able to bring lots of customers to these regions.
Yeah. Tony, let's talk about capacity here. Is the capacity going to be there specifically here for some of those Middle East nations, specifically, I guess, as well for the World Cup next year?
It's a good question. I look at a market like Qatar. We've got 11 hotels open. We've got 18 in the pipeline right behind it. I think many of our global competitors are similarly expanding their footprint across the region. But that expansion is much more long-term focused. Certainly, the World Cup is a terrific event, but we believe much more firmly in the long-term potential of the market. And that's what's really driving the expansion of our footprint.
Rita, when we talk about tourism picking back up, there is a lot of talk about, of course, capacity, whether there's enough hotel rooms, whether there's enough airline seats. There's also a lot of talk here about whether there are enough workers out there. A lot of folks, of course, left the hospitality industry during the crisis when everything was shut down. How many of those people, at least on a percentage basis, have come back?
Well, it's a very good question. I think we'll have a challenging task ahead because, before the pandemic, everybody was complaining that there was no enough workforce available in the tourism sector. And as you said, most of these people vanished with the pandemic. Of course, here in Portugal, we try to support the companies as much as possible. We injected tons of capital in the companies in order to preserve jobs. But we cannot forget that some of these gentlemen and lady just vanished. And so we need to create the best conditions for them to come back to the industry. And this involves an effort that should be developed by everyone, from the public side to the private side. It relates with salaries, of course. So we need to pay more We need to provide the conditions for the people to balance their personal life with the professional life, because as you can imagine, all the tourism professionals need to work late hours and even during weekends. So we need to provide regulation to balance these two sides of our life, professional and personal contexts. And we need to value also the jobs related with tourism. Here in Europe and in Portugal, we have been providing training, massive training, in order for the people to be able to respond to these innovation trends that Tony just pointed out a couple of minutes ago. So we see this pandemic also as an opportunity to increase our value proposition. And so we need to guarantee that all these professionals are sufficiently motivated to address these challenges and to provide a better service. So yes, so there are a lot of challenges ahead in order to create talent and to retain talent in the industry.
Are there immigration issues, travel restriction issues that you have to deal with right now with regards to the hospitality workers?
Yeah, I think I think it's happening everywhere. So tourism industry is quite open. In fact, when we travel, we look for diversity. We try to explore diversity. That's one of the trends. Or one of the motives why we travel. And this implies that people in the industry are very welcome are welcoming hiring people from other other parts of the world, right? So it's very common to have an hotel with a very diversified workforce, people coming from every part of the world. And in Europe, as you can imagine, and I guess that we talked about a lot about it, so we know about it. So we do have some migrants movements, and one of the industry that's trying to take advantage of these migrants movements is in fact the sector industry, because these people have language skills, they do understand diversity, and so we need to balance. One hand, these people are available, so they need to be absorbed by the industry. On the other hand, we do have some restrictions, labor restrictions, some migrants restrictions, related restrictions that need to be also taken into account. So again, it's about balancing these two dimensions.
Absolutely. Tony, I want to get your thoughts here. Wage pressures, salary pressures, getting people back to work.
Yeah, it's a significant issue for the industry. I think it's particularly acute here in the US. We're seeing things improve, but in those markets where demand has recovered most quickly, we do have some challenges. And I think there's a confluence of events that have created those challenges. There's still uneven policy about the reopening of schools. You've had extended unemployment benefits. You've had some challenges with bringing in foreign workers. And when you combine that, it has created some pressure. I think also there are industries that we're competing with for labor that maybe we haven't competed with in the past. Those industries like retail and online retail that have really thrived through the pandemic.
Is there sort of a balance here, though? I mean, if you do end up in a situation where you have to pay people more or offer more benefits here, I would assume at some point that would have to feed into what you ultimately charge for a room and your other services here. Is there a balance that you're looking for there?
Well, there's a balance. The good news is, by necessity, over the last 17 months, we've identified lots and lots of operating efficiencies in our operating model. And we think many of those efficiencies will endure post-pandemic. And at a minimum, they should mitigate some of the wage pressure that we're experiencing.
Jane, when we talk about the bookings coming out of China, and I guess we'll link this back, I hear, to the growth that we're seeing in the Middle East here. What's the dialogue right now that you see between your company and other companies in China and those in the Middle East? And more importantly, also, what's the dialogue between the governments?
Yeah, I think we have met many ambassadors from different countries and travel bureaus from different countries. Almost everyone we have talked to are very eager to welcome the Chinese tourists or Asian tourists. So they are ready to host these wonderful customers with buying power. However, they understand it might take some time. So what we do is, for the example of Singapore, we did an online Singapore week. Just to show the wonderful histories and museums and food, pre-educate our market. And then in the summer, when the kids are off school, we'll do an offline Singapore week within the city of Shanghai, where you have lots of affluent travelers normally. So hopefully by doing these pre-marketing events, we're able to help the destinations to promote their wonderful attractions and make sure people are very well prepared and planned when they are ready to travel abroad.
Jane, have you done any traveling, any significant amount of traveling here?
I came back to China in March of 2020, and I have done lots of travel within China, but not abroad.
Okay. Tony, how about you? Have you actually gotten back out there on the road at all for business or for leisure?
I have for both. I'm the perfect illustration of that blending of business and leisure travel. I've been in New York, I've been in Miami, I've been in Los Angeles. And as I look into the fall, I've got a lengthy trip through the Caribbean to visit many of our all-inclusive hotels. I'll be in Germany, England, Italy, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi through the balance of 2021. So I'm quickly getting back to pre-pandemic volume of international travel.
All right, and Rita, I guess I'll throw you the softball question here. I mean, I'm looking to plan a vacation here. My wife wants to go to Paris, and my mother wants to go to Senegal. My son just wants to stay home and play Minecraft. What's the selling point here? Tell us why we should go to Portugal.
Well, first of all, I think it's a safe country, and this is really so it's really something really important nowadays. So we launched, we were the first countries, by the way, in Europe, in the world, I guess, to launch a kind of a seal that guarantees that all the sites that are somehow related to tourism, accommodation, events, spaces that accommodate spaces and all that are COVID-free. And this, so it's really important to ensure that we continue to be a safe country. And a part of that, I think we do have a huge cultural heritage that needs to be valued and known and explored by all the ones that would like to visit the country in Europe. And of course, we do have our sun and beaches that are recognized worldwide as one of the best in Europe. We have been working very hard to maintain all these assets. And last year, with the pandemic, even though we had the pandemic, we were recognized to be the best European destination as far as tourism is concerned. So very proud of that.
All right, the best European destination. I'll put you on the spot here. If you had a dream vacation outside of Portugal, where would it be right now?
You know what? I think we should sell Iberia as a destination. So Portugal and Spain, we do have a lot of similarities, but still a lot of differences. So traveling to Spain by car, exploring the borders, I think it would be, you know, a nice place to be. Close from my place, from my home, but also far away enough, you know, with a couple of kilometers away. In order for me to feel that I'm in holidays, basically, that's the objective.
All right, very diplomatic answer. I've been to both places, both beautiful. Rita Marques there, of course, Secretary of State for Tourism over there in Portugal. Also want to thank Jane Sun, of course, CEO of Trip.com over there in Asia, and of course, everywhere around the world. Of course, is Tony Capuano, the CEO of Marriott International, giving us an update here on the world right now of travel and tourism.